how are we telling women to lean in when the systems that we're working in need to be reshaped? Because women are working in systems that were not designed for them. And the systems need to change as well. And putting all of the onus on women to make the change, or insinuating there's something that they need to fix, is inappropriate in certain corporate systems. So what I'm thinking when I'm hearing this whole embracing ambition thing is like, okay, now we have a chance to redesign what this looks like. And when we step in to number one, the number one spot from the number two space, we have the power and we have the control to determine and to shape what that looks like for others.
Hey everyone, it's Amy Lynn Durham, and you're listening to Create Magic at Work. Create Magic at Work is on a mission to equip senior leaders with tools they need to be a true quantum leader and actually understand what that means. Improve employee engagement, retain top talent, and transform your workplace culture to have less drama and stress. So let's start making magic.
Hey everyone, welcome to Create Magic at Work. Today, our special guest is Jenny Mitchell. She is the Chief Visionary Officer of Chavender. Chavender's vision is to help more people do more good, hence why she is a guest on the Create Magic at Work podcast. First sentence, help more people do more good. Founder and president of Chavender, Jenny Mitchell, is the author of the collaborative book Embracing Ambition, which showcases 12 women CEOs on their journey to leadership. Jenny's podcast, Underdog Leadership, helps women move from number twos to number ones in their life and work. Trained as a professional fundraiser, she's passionate about working with heart-centered leaders who are ready to change the world one mission at a time. Her company assists clients across Canada and the US with executive coaching, talent development at all levels of the organization, and facilitation and team building. Before completing her CFRE, Jenny trained as a classical musician and earned her Doctorate of Musical Arts. She brings her creative approach, her drive for excellence, and her passion for people to clients of all sizes. Jenny, welcome to Create Magic at Work.
Such a pleasure to be here, Amy, to be on the other side, to be the guest on the podcast. And I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I have to ask what musical instrument you play.
Oh, the piano.
Okay.
Classical musician. So very boxy, put the music in front of me and play it.
Mm-hmm.
But I have some wonderful memories of that time of my life, to be honest.
Yeah, that's amazing to tap into that musical side we often leave behind as we get older. I was forced to take piano lessons as a child and through my teenage years. And finally, my mom was like, okay, you don't have to go anymore, because I would just get so sick at the judges and the recitals because we would have to memorize our musical piece. And here I am, a preteen, and we would have to walk up and play the whole musical piece by memory in front of the whole crowd, in front of the judges. And I had so much stage fright about that, but that's a whole other podcast topic and story, I guess. If I had my music, I would have been okay, like as my security blanket. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that brings up so many memories for me. I did a lot of numbing along the way to get through a lot of that, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you can relate to that and, put on masks and personas.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I didn't enjoy the music. I liked the pursuit of it. I loved the sort of academic interest, and it was like a great big Sudoku puzzle. And I loved expressing myself. Where I always excelled was in partnership with others. So chamber music, or when I was accompanying someone, because I could lose myself. It wasn't so self-absorbed, Amy, which might have been part of the issue you had too, right? So glaring spotlight, and to get lost in it.
Yeah.
That was always where I thrived.
Yeah. Yeah, the things we go through as we grow up, right? But like now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd love to pick that back up again, to check out, to tap into that playfulness as an edge walker, right? All those things. Okay, so we haven't had anyone on the show that works in the nonprofit space. And so I'd love for you to explain to everybody a little bit of what that space is like. And when we think nonprofit, we think doing good for others, just like I described when I introduced you. What's that work world like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And many of your listeners will probably arrive in the not-for-profit world as board members, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they are brought in because of their expertise or their connections or their passion for the organization, for the cause, I should say. As an example, I've worked at large national organizations that have a foundation arm. And I get brought in to work on strategy or delivery or program delivery. So the first thing I will tell your listeners is there is no money. And what I mean by that is, and I'm really working on changing that perspective, that there is money. You have to be much more strategic about it. And you also must really be conscious about where you're going after the money. Because one thing that limited budgets and resources do is force you to focus and find clarity. And that's, I think, is one of the important things for your listeners to hear. I think the second thing is that we do not fund core social services, core human, like to your world, Amy, the humanness of being human, taking care of each other.
Mm-hmm.
We don't fund that properly in North America or in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And shame on us.
Mm-hmm.
Because what's happened in the charity world is we've become a scarcity minded, a fear of, and yet what we're inviting people to be part of is an incredibly worthy thing of helping humans be humans.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that might sound really big for your audience, but if we don't set a bar for how we treat people, how are we supposed to, move forward from there? And the final thing I will say is, from a work experience, because I know you care deeply about creating magic in work, there are great not-for-profits with amazing work cultures that are like vibrant and on fire. I think of people that worked on maybe, a cause like political campaign, the passion behind that, or, some kind of emergency relief. There are also not-for-profit organizations and charities that are really hamstrung. And we're doing a lot of talk in our world about burnout, same stuff that you are in corporate. We're talking a lot about living wage and all sorts of other really challenging problems of how we serve humans on the planet. And the people that work in them.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And the reason why I say that is a lot of thoughts have been coming up while you're sharing. I feel like there's this stigma, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, or if you think I'm wrong or right, or it's somewhere in between. I feel like there's this stigma with doing work for the greater good that we shouldn't be paid for it, or we overwork ourselves because it's for the greater good. So when you said burnout, I'm like, that totally makes sense, because a lot of people that are giving, that are empathic, that want to do work for the greater good, I have seen struggle with being paid for their services in the appropriate way, and also struggle with stopping to rest. So I'm curious, because I'm wondering how that is tied to the underdog leadership theme and also the embracing ambition. Like, where does that meet?
Yeah. Okay, let's draw some lines. So first of all, just a food for thought. How do you stop working when the humanitarian aid is so great? When the need is imminent, real, and happening right now? How do you turn off your computer at 5 p.m. to go home and have a normal life? How do you mentally justify that, Amy?
Yeah.
And then the resentment and the anger that happens when you go to a regular dinner party the next night with other people and they don't get it, Amy. and they're not from your world, and they're busy. I think one of the things we're going to talk about is money mindset, because I think this fits into a lot of things. Is like, and they're showing off their new Tesla, just as an example, Amy. And how are you supposed to say that's an awesome Tesla? Great, and you're thinking that could house an entire refugee camp. It could feed everybody for 3 weeks. And how do you say that? I mean, these are real challenges that leaders in the not-for-profit sector are having trouble with. And that stopping to rest piece that you mentioned is really important. We're now talking about that for the first time, and we're trying to avoid the martyrdom that has existed in the sector for so long, because the next generation coming up will not put up with that. They have different values, and they will just leave. We have major challenges with retention because we've set up organizations that are unsustainable. It's a smoke and mirrors budget.
I love how you mentioned martyrdom with that. I think that that's such a good call out, because a lot of people that step into giving and helping may cross the line or into how did I get into this martyrdom space? And when did that even happen? I just got into this work to help and to make the world a better place. What are some signs that we can look for when we're doing that, even in our personal lives, right? Where do you see that come up?
Well, I think we're learning a lot more. I mean, coming out of the pandemic, we're realizing the importance of boundaries. I would call them structures. I always say to my clients, you can never give more than you're willing to give. Once you're past that line, Amy, that's on you. It's not on them. So be very conscious of what you're giving. And I don't mean just money, by the way. Money, please give money. Because that really is the most fastest way to alleviate challenges. But time, energy, leadership, those are all things that, when you're up at 10 o'clock at night trying to write board minute meetings and you're resentful, you're giving more than you meant to give, and the resentment will come back.
Yeah.
So we have a whole remember where charity started, Amy, just to back this way up. They were the wives of the political people and the well-to-do people that started the concept of charities and not-for-profits, and they did it as a amateur hour in their, not that the work was amateur, but their contribution was not as professionals. And as the sector has matured, these are real. I mean, the head of a hospital foundation has a huge job, and yet we're still fighting about how much money they make or don't make. So this is kind of the martyrdom and the shift. I'd like our audience to remember that charities are also businesses, but they're businesses with a social goal, not just a bottom line goal. And it really comes down to the leadership and the board of how they want that mission to be executed on. And they can make choices informed by those decisions and whatnot. But that martyrdom happens at the board level, happens everywhere.
Yeah. I like how you said, notice when resentment starts coming up, because that's definitely a sign that you're overgiving energetically, and a break something needs to be shifted. I also like how you mentioned the boundary piece. And really, I have seen, it's an interesting call out. I have seen a lot more of the word boundaries used coming out of the pandemic. What do boundaries look like? How do I set boundaries for myself? It's kind of kicked around all over Instagram too, and like the different self-help accounts, right? How do I set boundaries, this, that, and the other. So that's interesting that you're talking about the new generation coming up that's really going to release hopefully some martyrdom there, because if they don't take care of themselves, how can they continue to do this work for the greater good, right? That's a really great awareness of the limits of their physicality, right? I want to go back to...
I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just going to finish one more thought, is too that it's on us to resource the thing properly. So just because the organization isn't resourced properly, Amy, does not mean you have to fill the gap and do the work of 4 people. When the role will only fund 1.
Yeah, I want to go back to your comment when you're at a party, not you per se, but just the metaphor, the story you shared. And it's like, how do I justify this in my mind that this person or these people or whoever is just spent all of this money on a G-Wagon, I'll make it up. Yep. And this could fund an entire refugee camp. What is your bigger picture? Like, if we could expand that and kind of look at the planet in like an overview, there's so many resources that are out there. Why do you think there is this discrepancy or this scarcity mentality overall, energetically, in like the global consciousness?
Oh, it's just a light question like that, Amy.
Sorry.
So we know from the data that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. That goes across the continents. I think what's different now is that we actually have eyes into the inequity way more than we ever did before, whether that's because we have journalism, we have social media, we can see, and it really hurts us to see what's going on in the world. It's always happened, just to be clear. And there's always been really poor people. We just haven't seen it as much. So this wealth inequitableness has really exacerbated. And keep in mind, when we talk about charity, some of the most generous people are people that live in rural areas. So on percentage of their income, they're significantly more generous than some of the most wealthy of our world. So everything is on a relativity scale. Mm-hmm. I'm not answering your question, but what the question I would bring to your listeners, which I think is maybe more important, are you putting your money, time, and talent behind the core values and beliefs in your world that mean a lot to you? When you say you care about the environment, are you joining a board to help your neighborhood community garden? Are you giving financially, donating to organizations that uphold those goals? Because we can no longer be, sideliners or bystanders. Mm-hmm. The world is now crazily interconnected, and we can start calling out the inequities. That, I think, is something that the profit sector is actively doing right now. Doesn't mean we're going to change it, but I think calling it out and asking questions about it is really important for our collective future, Amy. Like, I see that as a call to action from this podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for calling that out. Question on that. If I want to do something like that, that's in alignment with my passions or my values to give back, how can I be sure that when I give money, it goes to where they're saying it's going to go?
Oh, it's a great question. So it comes down to trust, right? And I'm not going to be here on this podcast to, the big question is, well, how much of it goes to overhead and how much of it goes to the actual people or the mission and the cause? And my answer to you would be, if we didn't have the programming, we wouldn't have any fundraising. If we didn't have needs in the community, we wouldn't have to fundraise, which, speaking of inequity, to me, that's fundamentally wrong, that we shouldn't all have access to things like healthcare. I'm a Canadian, but we still fundraise in Canada for healthcare. And I know in the States you do as well, right? It's big business, or simple, basic human necessities like a place to sleep and all those kinds of things. There are some ways you can inform yourself about a charity, asking questions. There are some mechanisms where you can look at their data and their information and all of their charity records online. But I would actually invite you to go and talk to the charity, find out what they're doing, ask them about their impact, and get to know some of the leadership team, because that's where you'll find the trust. The numbers only tell you so much, Amy. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to find the trust and get to know what their vision is, because really giving them $100 or giving them $100,000 is actually the same thought process, Amy. It's just one, and it almost sometimes can take as much time because you need to have a bunch of questions answered. Who are they? Do they do good work? Are they going to use my money wisely? If I'm picking a charity, is this the one or another one? Like, why us? And finally, does this align with the way I see the world, which is that why me, the donor piece.
Yeah, really good advice. Thank you. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your Underdog Leadership podcast overall philosophy. It's helping leaders that feel like they're in that number 2 spot move to the number 1 spot. What inspired you to, like, how does this all come together with like the nonprofit work and then this inspiration to help people feel like they're always kind of sitting in that number 2 spot?
Yeah, I think it's been an evolution. I think sometimes of charities as underdogs, right? Despite all of the inequities, despite all the challenges, all of the retention issues, all of the, things that could go wrong, they still survive. They do incredible work and they punch way the heck above their weight. As a quick side gear, that I got into fundraising, and then I realized I needed to get into the senior leadership suite, Amy, as I'm sure you realize with your coaching, to make real cultural change happen and to help people understand what fundraising is, because it's not asking people for money, just to be clear. It is connecting people who care with a mission and a cause that they want to identify with and being the glue between it. And so once I got into the senior leadership suite and I got into executive coaching, I realized, this is where I can really make the change. But I still found this sort of band of people, sometimes women, not always, who were really good at making everybody else look good and managing up. So the proverbial number 2. But what I loved about them was, in my opinion, they had all the good skills, Amy. They had the read the room, emotional intelligence. I'm not sure about the spiritual intelligence that you speak about, but that really people-based, because they were empathetic themselves. They could read the room, but they were stuck, Amy. If they get pigeonholed in this role of making everybody else look good and kind of being the reliable one, and meanwhile they're drowning, or they can't imagine themselves stepping into number 1. And they have small little habits like, the way they speak is like, I think, or maybe we should, or they have all these sort of couching words. And you're nodding, so I'm hoping this resonates with you. And to step into that leadership role became a real passion of mine, because they were the ones that needed to be in charge to make the emotional changes. All the stuff that you're talking about on your podcast happened, but they just needed a little nudge to get there. And that's the audience and the group that I've kind of committed my whole life, my career to.
And that's incredible that you identified that and that you're tapping into helping people in that way, in addition to all of the nonprofit work that you do. Yeah, that's amazing. So tell me a little bit about Embracing Ambition. What inspired you to get together with this group of women and write this book titled Embracing Ambition? And what's behind that?
So pinch me that it's really happening is the way to start. So one of the things you'll learn about me, Amy, is I'm pretty honest and I'm pretty transparent. And one of the reasons I am like that is because if I'm going to model that for the number 2s to become number 1s, I need to show that I can stay human as number 1, that I can keep my humanity. And when I hide it all behind gloss and shine, first of all, it just doesn't feel like me. And second of all, I'm really championing a new style of leadership where we can bring and you too, we bring our whole selves. We bring our warts, we bring our failures, we bring our challenges, we bring our psychological bugaboos, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Doing that, it creates space for other people to also bring them. So I wanted to write a book. I knew it was going to be about women's leadership, but I didn't want it to be just about me, because that was only one perspective. And I have always worked in collaboration. It's a core value of mine. I really seek out others to understand things. And I also knew in this modern world, who wants to hear from another white woman in her 50s talking about leadership, to be honest. And it was important to me that they came from different voices. So
love it.
I was calling it a collaborative book right from the beginning, because I didn't want us just to write a chapter and then submit. I wanted this to truly write it together. I wanted that kind of connection. And so as I framed this idea out, which, by the way, I made it like 12 million times harder for myself, Amy. It would have been way easier to write your own book. that's not what I wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here, what happened was I had these conversations with these women. So they're all women CEOs. And it was inspired by the research of a woman called Megan Rabine. And she is the dean of Douglas College at Rutgers College in New Jersey. And it's a women's college. And she had done her PhD on the lived experience of women CEOs in not-for-profit at the $500 million level and up. So big organizations. We're talking YMCAs, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, those kinds.
Mm-hmm.
And she had come up with 5 pillars of research, Amy. And you're going to recognize them. Because when I was sitting in the audience listening to her, I was like, oh my God, that's me. That's me. That's me. So women tend to get hired into positions that are almost impossible, right? Glass cliff assignments. The women that take on leadership roles tend to over-identify with the constituent group they work with. So they embody the roles, is the language she uses. And because of that, boundaries become really challenging because they're so intertwined. Things like these women tend to be very visionary. In other words, they can see things into the future that others can't see.
It's Edgewalker.
Does this sound familiar?
Yeah, well, that's the whole Edgewalker work, sensing the future and the vision that we talk about on the show. Yeah, really cool. Keep going.
I love this. Okay, so the other one I'll mention is the loving a good challenge. These women tend to be people who are like, oh, I don't know anything about that sector. I should go and explore that, as opposed to sort of leaning back. So with this pillars of the research, 12 women came together. We workshopped our leadership stories. So the takeaway for your audience is crafting your leadership story in partnership with peers can be incredibly powerful because your story gets shared back to you. And that is actually where the learning was, Amy. Mm-hmm. So I knew it would be in the writing, mm-hmm. but it was in the translation and the acceptance and the understanding. And so what people came out of these sessions with was, I feel seen, I feel heard. And often we don't do this till the end of our careers, mm-hmm. right? In retirement, we reflect back. Mm. So that's kind of the concept of the collaborative book. We wrote it together on a weekend. Yes, it took a little bit longer to get the drafts together, but now we're in a place where we have a manuscript, and we will actually be publishing in April. So that was the process. Very unique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very unique and very, like you said, collaborative, and bringing different people together, bringing their unique perspectives, and sharing those diverse perspectives. I think that's really unique, and I'm excited to read it.
Yeah. And just as an aside that mm-hmm. a lot of discussions about titles, because once again, you've got 12 authors. We do this collaboratively, so everything takes a little bit longer, but it also has way more legs to it. And where we landed with Embracing Ambition, and curious your first impressions of it, a lot of people have said to me, it's a bit of reclaiming the word ambition, maybe, but also the embracing almost softens it a little bit too. So it's that kind of interesting dichotomy between I'm proud of who I am, I'm ready to embrace my ambition, which is part of the number 2 to number 1, and I'm ready to own all my space, my warts, my vulnerabilities, as well as my strengths and my capabilities. And I've kind of arrived. That's kind of been the theme. And I will say that the journey for the women has been incredibly healing. And I use that word intentionally mm-hmm. because sometimes these are things they have shoved under for a long time. For example, one of the gals talks about being the only little Black girl in her local school, and the fact that she never knew that she caused a huge ruckus in the community because she was the very first one to go to that school, and her parents kept that from her. Can you believe that?
That's incredible.
Like, she didn't see herself as a different color.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
With the Embracing Ambition title and then sharing everything that you collaborated with on the book, I'll share what's coming up for me. When I first saw the Embracing Ambition, I was like, oh, I want to hear more about this, because I've also heard a backlash on the whole lean in concept, right? Like, how are we telling women to lean in when the systems that we're working in need to be reshaped? Because women are working in systems that were not designed for them. And the systems need to change as well, and putting all of the onus on women to make the change, or insinuating there's something that they need to fix, is inappropriate in certain corporate systems. So what I'm thinking when I'm hearing this whole embracing ambition thing is like, okay, now we have a chance to redesign what this looks like. And when we step in to number one, the number one spot from the number two space, we have the power and we have the control to determine and to shape what that looks like for others. So it's almost like this melding of the two, like, let me step into this number one space. Let me embrace ambition in the way I say it looks. And now I'm reshaping the corporate system because of that. I'm not stepping in with the mask on that maybe I wore that might have got me there 10 years ago. I'm stepping in with, this is going to be different now. And this is what it's going to look like. And this is what ambition looks like today. So that's just everything that came to me with that.
Gorgeous.
Thank you.
I mean, it just like so clear. And let's give two examples for the listeners. Example number one is a couple of charities in Canada are using the example of, if you are ambitious, you need to be in the office. So if you want to be promoted up, we want you in the office. We want you to be visible and to be seen. But if you don't want to move up, if you've got little kids at home, Amy, for example, we're totally good with you going remote. That, I think, is a great example of ambition by choice. It doesn't mean they're not ambitious future on. They're just making conscious decisions. Another good example, which I've heard, which I also love, is just remember, when you're moving up the corporate ladder, all the networking you have to do happens often between 4 and 6 p.m. or in 8 o'clock in the morning. So many of us will peg women as not being ambitious because they don't choose to attend those events. And I think that's a great example of how it doesn't fit our schedules. We're in caregiving. I mean, Sheryl Sandberg got blasted because she talked about going home and then working from 8 p.m. till midnight. Remember that in the book, Amy? And, we're going to have to rejig our systems and our structures, to your point, to accommodate needs, but not just for women, for men too. That's what I'd like people to take away.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing that, Jenny. Yeah. One of my favorite books, by the way, is called Lean Out. I just want to share that.
Tell me more.
And it really gives a new perspective on what it's like. I mean, because I've been there, you've been there, in that space, and what it could look like and what we need to look for. Exactly what you just said. Sometimes people can't go to the cocktail networking event, but they might be one of the best people for the team or the best leader. There's lots of call outs in there for that. And we'll drop the link in the show notes for that too. But yeah, that's why I'm touching on these topics. And you were the perfect person to touch on it with all of these things that we're talking about. I'm going to pull a card for you from the Create Magic at Work Journal Prompt Card Deck. And it's for everyone listening also. This is your message for the week or for the day. Anytime you're listening to this, this is meant for you. Let's see what we get. Oh, look at that. We got mentorship.
Oh, beautiful.
Yay. All right. The affirmation is, I willingly share knowledge with others in order to leave a positive legacy. Of course, everything we were talking about today, right? If someone listening is seeking connection, a mentor, someone to help them move from number 2 to number 1, how would you suggest they go about doing that?
Great question. So if somebody is looking to move from number 2 to 1, how would they go about mentorship, just to clarify?
Yeah, or finding someone that could help them along the way, seeking out a mentor to do that. What would your advice be, Jenny?
So I have a lot of opinions about this. I think sometimes we don't think of mentorship big enough. We have mentorship up. We also have mentorship across, Amy, and we have mentorship down. So to me, it's a 360 experience. And I think actively thinking about our own personal board of directors, our own personal group of mentors, and when we reach out, inviting them to be part of your world for something specific. So the takeaway is, let's use you as an example, Amy. If I was inviting you into my world, I'd say, Amy, I really admire your work on spiritual intelligence, especially the part about, the way you talk about a higher calling into our work. I'd be interested in that kind of work and bringing more of that into my life and my work life. Would you be a mentor for me and meet with me blank, blank, blank? So that's that really specific ask part. Not would you be my mentor, which is such a vague thing. Like I think that part of mentorship is dead, Amy. Mm-hmm. The automatic thing that you are in a law firm and that the senior partner is going to mentor you just by definition. I much prefer the concept of mentorship, that you go out and seek out the people you admire. And to your message, you may not even know why you admire them or what it is. It might just be like a kinetic energy, but you want to spend time with them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would invite your listeners to honor that.
Really good invitation. And looking for something specific that you called out is important, a strength you're recognizing in someone else. Yeah. I love how you shine in this area, or I love how you're talking about this. I'd love to learn more, that kind of thing. Yeah. Thank you, Jenny. Yeah. Okay. So Jenny, if people want to connect with you and learn more, how can they reach out to you?
Well, seeing as we're on a podcast and your listeners, I'm sure, love listening to podcasts, I have one called Underdog Leadership, as we've mentioned, and you can find that on all the platforms. My company is called Chavender, and it's lavender, but with a CH at the beginning, and that's the same spelling, chavender.com. And they can also reach me at just Jenny with a Y at chavender.com. And I love talking to people about leadership. If this idea of like being stuck in the number 2 really resonated, because usually that's a visceral, Amy. People go, oh, or it's like a fear. Maybe that's me. Mm-hmm. I'd like to think that I've married the word ambitious with compassion in a good way. I mean, I'm consciously working towards that every day. It's not perfect, Amy. Mm-hmm. Some days I do better than others.
I think that's really nice. That's the word I'm going to use. I think that's a really nice compliment that you're helping the compassionate leaders that can really step into emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence, move to that top spot, because then that ripple effect happens within the systems we're in. That's a big deal. So if anybody felt that visceral reaction listening to Jenny right now, please connect with her to learn more. Jenny, thank you so much for being a guest on the Create Magic at Work podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you. Thanks for sending some magic to everyone today. It was such a good one. Thank you.
Hey everyone, Amy here. I am so excited to share this news with you. If you've been a longtime listener of the podcast, or even if you're new, you probably know that I weave spiritual intelligence through all of the episodes of Create Magic at Work. And we often talk about where you are at with making wise and compassionate decisions, what it looks like to be a wise and effective change agent. How do I put my ego aside and operate from my higher self? And if you've ever been curious as to what level you're sitting at in your life in those skills, I have some great news for you. I have loaded the SQ21 assessment on the Create Magic at Work website. This is something that only my private clients have access to in a coaching partnership with me. However, I have decided to give everyone access to the SQ21 assessment at a generous price, a small fee. You can take the assessment at createmagicatwork.net/shop, and you will get a printout that you can take with you the rest of your life as to where you're sitting, what level you're sitting at in the 21 skills of spiritual intelligence. This is an amazing opportunity. I encourage you to take advantage of it. Again, if you've ever been listening to all of the past episodes like, I wonder where I sit at making wise and compassionate decisions, or I wonder where I sit at being able to access my higher self, explore that curiosity and go to the website and take the assessment. I will also have that link dropped in the show notes so it's easily accessible to you here after the episode. And again, if you have any questions or if you just want to have a chat with me, I'm always available for a complimentary 30-minute coffee chat, so you can explore that as well. But get over to the website, take that assessment, and give yourself the gift of something that you can take with you for the rest of your life. Sending magic to you. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming back every week to listen to a new episode of Create Magic at Work and really helping to support and advocate for healthy leaders, workplaces, and lives for all of us. If you want any information on how to connect with me, click on the link in the show notes. You'll get access to all of the social media links for Create Magic at Work. Stay following along for more amazing episodes where we help you improve productivity and profitability in the workplace and decrease stress. Sending magic to everyone, and see you next time.